Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another reading vlog. I think this is going to be a really short one because I feel like I only want to include this one book in this video. Basically, I'm going to be reading Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. The reason that I want to make this just a one book reading vlog is because I really want to see how emotionally scarred I'm going to be by the end of this book. And I just want to see whether this book is going to succeed in doing that, because if it doesn't, then it's a letdown. Now, I've seen a couple of mixed things on this. I've seen people say that they didn't like it as much as they thought that they would, and then I've seen people say that they absolutely loved it. Now, I'm only a couple of pages in right now, so I can't really tell you what I think of it. Honestly, I'm finding it really hard to get into because I've gone from a really easy read with really cringy dialogue to a book that uses very big words that I don't understand, because I am not that intellectual. So far I don't really have any thoughts on it at all. I'm just really hoping I can get into it and I'm really going to enjoy it, because I do want this to make me cry. If it doesn't make me cry, then I don't want it. I don't know about you guys, but I just feel like when a book makes me cry, it just feels really cathartic. Like, it feels like I'm letting go of something. It feels like I'm refreshed, you know? There's something wrong with me. Am I the only one that feels that way? I just feel really good after a good cry, and sometimes I just need a book to make me cry, you know? It's basically essentially follows these two people who, I believe there's a lot of miscommunication between them. They're kind of in love, but they're never lovers, and they are basically video game developers, and throughout this whole book I guess you see them grow up and you see them, you know, make this video game, and obviously life happens. So that's essentially really all I know. I don't know much other than that. I'm excited to see whether I like this one. I'm excited to see whether I'm in floods of tears at the end. So if that doesn't happen, then what even is this book? Anyway, I'll update you guys when I've actually made some progress. Also, completely not book related, but if you watch all of my reading vlogs, which if you do, thank you very much, and you've come from a previous reading vlog, which, will it be a previous reading vlog? I'm not sure, but basically I have a situation going on with my finger right now. It's still swollen. It's still look at it. It's a fucking Richmond sausage. Anyway, I got given antibiotics from the paramedic that I spoke to over the phone, because she was like, oh yeah, it's a weird one, because I had to send her pictures and it hasn't gone down yet, and I'm just, you know, I just want this gone now. It's very irritating. I feel very claustrophobic in my own skin, because like I can bend it, but it feels weird, you know what I mean? Just, yeah, that's the situation with the finger. If you've come from a previous reading vlog, that's a situation. And it is a situation. Okay, you're just gonna have to excuse my appearance, because I literally look like Doris with her rollers in, who's gonna get tucked up in bed with the blanket up to her chin. I'm doing overnight curls, okay? The end results are worth it. I have realised I probably should have updated way before this point. However, I'm updating now, and that's all that matters. So I am currently 30% into Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, and I just wanted to give a few of my thoughts before I get any further in. Obviously, I do want to make this a one book reading vlog, so I don't know how that's going to go, because this could be very short. The main idea of this reading vlog is just to see if this book makes me cry, because I just need to see it happen, okay? If this book doesn't make me cry, then it hasn't achieved what it was meant to achieve. So I'm actually really enjoying it so far. It's definitely taking me a lot longer to get through than I originally thought that it would. I definitely feel like this book is a lot wordier than I was expecting. It's very descriptive, and I think the only reason that it's taken me so long to read and why it took me so long to get into is because the book that I read previous to this was such an easy, fast read. I mean, the writing wasn't great, but it was just so much quicker to read. Like, it wasn't wordy, it wasn't overly descriptive. So I've essentially gone from, you know, A+ trash to really good writing, and it took me a while to get into, but I'm actually really into it now. So I really am enjoying Sam and Sadie's characters. In fact, I'm enjoying all of the characters. I definitely feel like I could see people not liking them, but I mainly feel like I could see that because they just feel so real and raw. I feel like there are often books that we read because the plot is amazing and obviously we enjoy the characters, but in this book in particular I feel like it's very character driven. And the reason that I feel like they feel so real is because they're so incredibly flawed. Like, they're not perfect people. They have feelings and they have faults and they act out on a whim. And honestly, that's how most humans act. There's a lot of miscommunication that goes on this, so I feel like I definitely could see people not liking this for that reason. But I feel like it makes them more likable, or not likable, but it just makes them feel real, and I feel like that's what's making me really enjoy this book. I'm just really excited to see where it goes, because I don't know where the sad stuff comes in. I mean, there's already been some really shocking moments that I'm like, whoa, that's traumatic. So there's definitely some major trigger warnings for this book, like suicide and cancer and a bunch of other stuff, but it just feels so real. Like, it feels like these are legit people, and I have to keep reminding myself, like, this hasn't actually happened in real life. Okay, I legitimately just had to change over my SD card because it ran out of space. I swear to God, this reading vlog does not want to happen. For some reason, things just keep getting in the way. So there is a character with a really stupid name. I think his name is Dax or Dox or something. It begins with a D, and I don't care to remember it because I really hate his character. And I know he's not made to be liked, but I just want to punch him in the face because, one, he took absolute liberties of being a professor, and he made this student fall in love with him, and I don't like him. He has a really shitty attitude. And so far he is the one character that I very much dislike, and I feel like people would not like Sadie and Sam for things that they do, but I like them. They're flawed, but I like them. But this other character, oh my god, he can get in the bin. He is absolute trash. And honestly, I just don't want to see him anymore. I don't want to see him in Sadie's life because fuck him. The last thing that I just want to mention before my camera dies, because I feel like it will die on me because that's the kind of vlog that I'm having. I feel like this book is told in what sounds like a really confusing way. So essentially it's told in the present. So there are like, I think there are like 4 or 5 different parts, and then in each part there's like 5 or 6 chapters. And when you're reading it, you're reading in the present, but then sometimes things from the past will be mentioned or things from the future will be mentioned. Just as an example, so there's one chapter where, you know, you're finding out that Sam is about to ask Sadie if she wants to make this game with him, and he's thinking about all the different ways that he could ask her to do this. And whilst he's, you know, thinking about this, you then kind of quickly move on to future Sadie, where she's given an interview to, I don't know, someone from the press, and she's talking about how Sam asked her to make this game. And the thing that makes this weird is that you aren't explicitly told that you're now going to be reading, you know, from a future version of the character. It just kind of just goes into the future, like, suddenly, which sounds like it would be really confusing, but strangely it's not. And it's like there was another part, and I can't remember what the present part was. I think Sam had dropped Sadie off somewhere, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden you're reading from a past younger Sam when he was with his mum, and it sounds like it would be confusing. Like, usually when books tell stories from, you know, different time perspectives, it usually tells you, like, it will say, oh, you know, 10 years earlier or 10 years later. This doesn't do that. You're literally in a chapter and it just flips back and forth, which, let me just say, I usually get really funny about books that, you know, tell things from different timelines, and I don't have a problem with it in this book. I actually really like how it's done. It flows really well, and not at any point have I got confused by it. And actually I really enjoy it because it's almost like reading a little bit of a puzzle. So at the beginning, when Sam first sees Sadie for the first time in 6 years, he calls out to her and she can't hear him. And he turns round, and I think this is how you pronounce this word. I should have looked it up. But basically, he calls out to her and he goes, Sadie, whatever her last name is, you're dying of dysentery or dysentery. I don't know how you say it. Anyway, I won't give away what the inside joke is because you actually learn what the inside joke is about later on. And it does that quite often. It will kind of give you a snippet of information, but you don't find out the full kind of idea of that information until further on. So in that way it is like reading a puzzle, because you're just getting these little tidbits here and there about these characters and their lives and, you know, what's happening and what's going to happen. Slowly you're kind of just putting these characters together like puzzle pieces, which now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wow, because these characters literally think about their games as puzzle pieces, and I'm like, they're like puzzle pieces themselves. I just had a whole epiphany moment here. Anyway, I am really liking it, and I can honestly see why a lot of people really do like it. And I was worried at the start because I honestly thought I wasn't going to get into it, because it did take me a little while to get into the flow of things, to really enjoy the writing and the story, but I'm into it. I can see why this is a lot of people's favourite book. So I'm going to switch this off now and I'm going to keep reading. Oh my god, also absolutely not book related right now. Although, kind of, because it's game related. Has anyone watched The Last of Us? Okay, I am losing my shit over this show. If it does not win awards, I don't know what's wrong with the world. I loved The Last of Us, like the game. I played it years and years ago when it kind of like first came out. And when I heard they were making a show, I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about this, you know, because adaptations are never good. This adaptation has exceeded my expectations. I just watched the episode where they stumble upon another group of people, and those people aren't good people. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna spoil it. If you played the game, you will know. If you watch the show, you will know. That episode was honestly my favourite. The female rage moment, chef's kiss. Pedro Pascal saying baby girl. And I mean this in the most platonic, non-sexual way, because I know that people always turn that into a sexual thing. Honestly, him saying that in that moment made my heart, which is the size of probably a pea, it made my heart burst. I actually think I have a miniature crush on Pedro Pascal. He just seems like a great guy. Like, you know, when celebrities, like, I feel like there are certain celebrities that just seem like good people, like they would be the nicest people, like genuinely. I feel like there are celebrities that you just know are fucking assholes, but he seems like one of the really good ones. And I am falling in the bracket of being one of those women now who is obsessed with Pedro Pascal. I mean, I'd seen him in The Mandalorian before and really liked him in that. Oh my god, and he's in Buffy. He's in my favourite show of all time. I bloody love Pedro Pascal, man. Anyway, that's my reading update. That is my update on The Last of Us. I will update you when I've made more progress, and you know, maybe my next update will be me in a blubbering wreck, so you never know. I don't know what's happening right now. Fuck. I hate this book. This shouldn't be allowed. Oh, my heart hurts. Oh my god. I hate this book. This is so embarrassing. If you're wondering if the book made me cry, the book made me cry. Okay, so it's now 2 days later and I finished tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow 2 days ago, and I've just been kind of sitting on my thoughts and waiting to sit down and talk about how I felt about this book in the end. So when I initially started this book, I don't feel like I gave the proper description. I think mainly just because I didn't really know what the book was about myself. If I was going to go back and explain it now, I would say that this book takes place over the span of 30 years and it follows Sadie and Sam, who are like game developers, and they develop this game together, and the book really is just about their lives and the relationships that they build throughout their lives and the relationships that they end and everything in between, how they deal with success, toxic relationships. It's literally just following them and their lives, but it's done in the most beautiful way possible. Obviously the main idea of this reading vlog was to see if this book would make me cry. And it did its job. I was absolutely broken by the end of this book, and it's not the most traumatic book that I've ever read, but I feel like the book was just done so well that I felt so connected to these characters and to their lives that even the most insignificant character who we didn't really see much throughout the book, I felt such a connection to them that, you know, if something happened, I was just broken. I felt like this book dealt with a lot of stuff really well. I felt like it dealt with loss really well, abusive relationships really well, and, you know, some of the things I haven't dealt with personally. I just feel like the way that they were done just felt so realistic to me that I honestly, truly, it was hard to not feel like these weren't real people. Throughout the whole time I was reading this book, I had to keep reminding myself that these people aren't real. These games that they're making aren't real, and I can't just go on Google and be like, Googling the games or Sam and Sadie. I feel like when you read, there are some books that you read for the plot, right? But this book, I feel, is one of those books where you read specifically for the characters. And I just want to say that the characters in this book are incredibly flawed. They're not perfect. And to be honest, at times, in fact, nearly most of the time, they are very unlikable. There's a lot of miscommunication that goes on. I feel like between Sadie and Sam, there are times when they're incredibly toxic towards each other. Their friendship isn't perfect, and I feel like this would turn a lot of people off. I've read a couple of reviews, and I know some people say that they really hated the characters and they ended up DNFing it, or they just really didn't like the book because of that. But honestly, I loved the fact that they weren't perfect because they felt so much more well-rounded and they felt so much more real, because honestly, people aren't perfect. People make mistakes, and people quite often don't have personalities that you're gonna like, but that's literally just life. That happens. It always happens. I also felt like the game aspects of this book were done really well. Now, I am personally a gamer, so I love that side of the book, but I'm not a game developer, so I don't know much about that process and that world. I've watched kind of behind the scenes of certain games before, like The Last of Us, because that's a game that I was truly invested in for a very long time. But I don't know much about that process, but the way that it was written made me feel like the author knew a lot about game development. I don't know if she does. The way that these games were written about was just so well done that I actually felt like they were fully developed games that you could actually go and play, and I just could envision everything that the author was trying to write about. I just was not expecting to get as invested as I was into this book, and it was one of these books where at the end I read the final page and I just didn't know what to do with myself, because I just felt so heartbroken. And the funny thing is that the way the book ends, it's not a heartbreaking ending, but I just felt like I'd gone on this really incredibly long journey that was exhausting. I was just emotionally invested to the point where at the end, I was just beside myself. I didn't know what life was and how I should go on and proceed, because I literally feel like I'd lived these people's lives, and it was a lot. Now, although the characters are flawed, I would say about Sam and Sadie that I love the fact that they were so passionate about what they were doing. I really feel like that translated through the book, and I honestly was rooting for them the whole way through. Even though they could sometimes be very unlikable, I was rooting for them. Like, I wanted them to succeed. I just really love this book. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. I felt like the writing style was really well done. I also really love the way that it goes back and forth in the timeline a lot. It doesn't specifically tell you that it's doing that, and I think I mentioned this before, but it just kind of flips back and forth like randomly, but it's not confusing, and I feel like it's done really well. And I really hope this is going to be adapted, because I would love to see it on the screen, whether it's a TV show or a movie. Anyway, that's my reading vlog. I don't know how long this is going to be because it was a pretty short one, but I hope you guys enjoyed. If you've read this book, let me know in the comments what you thought, whether you liked it or you hated it. I don't really mind. I love seeing other people's different opinions. And until the next video, I will see you then. So bye guys.